not just in each and every generation, but b'chol yom vayom, each and every day. V'chol yom vayom chayav adam lirot atzmo ke'ilu yatsa hayom mimitzrayim. Says the Sefer HaTanya, not just on Pesach, not just once a night, not just every generation, but every single day a person needs to view themselves as having left Egypt. What does that mean? And he explains, Yetziat nefesh ha'elokit mima'asar haguf. It is, Ramon spoke before, that there was a physical element of slavery and there was a spiritual element of slavery. And there is a certain spiritual reaching out of one's physical limitations, reaching out of those constraints, having that spiritual freedom that a person achieves in their life each and every day. That is something that we can connect to. That is something we can understand. And that too is part of the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. That too is something which is meant to spur us on to understand, to think about, to achieve. The Sfat Emet elaborates on it as well. I'm going to skip it for now. That is the second approach. But the third one, and this is what I really want to focus on. The third idea is to say that as we tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, really the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of going out of Egypt, is something which took place, but it's not just something that took place thousands of years ago, it's something that began there. It's something which was a prototype. It's something which is there to teach us about something that continues, and something that is continuing now. It's part of a bigger story, and that story continues. That story continues b'chol dor v'dor, and that is what we're trying to achieve. That's what we're trying to achieve on Seder night. There's a Ramban, source number 7. This is the Ramban at the end of Parshat Bo. We aren't going to have time to read through the entire thing now. I recommend to everybody, I print out this Ramban, I add it in my Haggadah. The Seder night, we read it out, we learn it out together with the family. I would recommend, get it in Hebrew, get it in English, whatever it is. Take this Ramban, read through and tell the story on the Seder night. The Ramban at the end of Parshat Bo says, it's very fundamental. He talks about the fact that Yetziat Mitzrayim, remembering leaving Egypt, is something which we have in many, many different mitzvot. Many mitzvot throughout the Torah. We know every day we mention Yetziat Mitzrayim. In Kriyat Shema, we have tzitzit, we have tefillin whereby it's mentioned, we have mezuzah, we have of course the Seder, we have Kiddush, we have other mitzvot which are seemingly disconnected, have nothing to do with Yetziat Mitzrayim, but it comes up again and again and again, this idea, this concept, Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. Says the Ramban, why is it? Why is it so fundamental, and why does it come up everywhere? And he says that Yetziat Mitzrayim was there as a prototype to teach us not just about the time when we left Egypt itself, but to teach us something more than that. If you turn over the page, the second page, right, you'll see it says in the second paragraph, the Rambani talks about the fact that at Yetziat Mitzrayim there were miracles. There were open and revealed miracles on a scale never before seen in history. He says, and that was HaKadosh Baruch Hu was proving to those, we know this from the Makot, right, in order to teach those who denied the existence of Hashem, those who denied the involvement of Hashem in the world, different ways, Hashem performed these miracles to show them that they were wrong. He says over here in the second paragraph on page 3, it's the singles page, בעבור כי הקדוש ברוך הוא לא יעשה אותו מופת בכל דור לעיני כל רשע או כופר. He says it's not going to happen that every single generation, every time there's somebody who denies the existence of God, that he's now going to perform a miracle to show them I'm still here. But he did that once. He did that in the most remarkable way, and that was at Yetziat Mitzrayim. And that was the prototype. Says the Ramban in the next paragraph, which is in bold. He says, מן הניסים הגדולים המפורסמים from the great, the famous, the revealed open miracles, a person is modeh, a person is able to recognize the nisim anistarim, the hidden miracles which take place every day. Shem yesod HaTorah kula, these are the foundation of the entire Torah. She'en le'adam chelek b'Torat Moshe Rabbeinu, a person has no portion in the Torah at all. Ad shena'amin, until you believe in this. בכל דברינו ומקרינו שכולם ניסים אין בהם טבע ומנהגו של עולם בין ברבים בין ביחיד. Everything that happens, כל דברינו ומקרינו, everything that happens to us, everything is miraculous. There is no such thing as teva, says the Ramban, no such thing as nature. There is no such thing as minhago shel olam, as things just happen, whether it's בין ברבים on a national level, whether it's בין ביחיד on an individual level. everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says on the next line, Hakol b'gzerat elyon, etc. And where did we learn this out? Where did we learn this principle? That was Yetziat Mitzrayim. Says the Ramban, when we came out of Yetziat Mitzrayim, that was where HaKadosh Baruch Hu was showing us, I'm here, and I'm with you. Everything that happens right now, you see it very, very clearly. There will be times in the future where you won't see it as clearly. I'll be hidden, but I'm still here. And you go back to this, and you remember. In other words, what happened at Yetziat, what happened there in Egypt, we tell the story to remember what happened. Keilu yatzah miMitzrayim. We remember how we went out. We remember Hashem's involvement in our lives, personally, nationally, at that time. And we understand that it continues right now as well. So whatever I'm going through, whatever we experience, we are going out of Egypt as well. The Abar Banal, source number 8 in his Haggadah. By the way, on the paragraph which we said, B'chol dor v'dor chayav lirot atzmo, the Abar Banal has an amazing perush. He's writing his commentary and he says, I don't understand. We read this Abar Banal today and we can't understand it. Because he writes there, he says, when we say we went out of Egypt, in the time when we went out, in the time we had a Beit HaMikdash, in the time we were in our homeland, we could understand, we could say, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et atzmo. He says, but now I'm sitting here in Galut. I'm sitting here in exile. We're sitting here in persecution. Look at the state of the Jewish people. Look at where we are, how downtrodden and oppressed we are. How do we say these words? What do we do? He gives his explanation. He gives his answer. But you think about where we are, and you think about the opportunity, the privilege that we have, that we read it, where we are and where we're sitting, and Bezrat Hashem, as Rav Rimon said, things will be good. So here's the Abar Banal over here. The Hallel that we say, we mentioned this in the Tzubah Marabanan Shir, the Hallel that we say on Seder night is split up. We say the beginning of Hallel, the end of Magid, before the meal, and then we have the Siman of the Seder of Hallel, which is later on. He says, why did we split it up? Where did it come from? Source number 8, מה שנראה לי בזה, שחז"ל שיערו בהלל הזה שני חלקים, there are two different parts to Hallel. החלק הראשון מתחילתו עד למים ומים, the first section ידבר מיציאת מצרים ולקריאת ים סוף. Those sections talk about leaving Egypt. It talks about the splitting of the sea. ולכן קראו הלל המצרי, that is called the Egyptian Hallel. And these are the first two paragraphs which talk about Hallel, the redemption that took place in the past. But then, on the third line, he says, לכן עשו בהפסקה, ותקנו אחריו ברכת הגאולה, שעניינה ההודעה על גאולת מצרים. We say a bracha. We say the bracha של גאלנו, after that, for the redemption which took place in the past. תקנו שיעשה אחריו מצוות המצה והמאור ויאכלו הסעודה. That's where we have our break. We eat our meal. And then, now in bold again, in source number 8, אחריו יבוא החלק השני מן ההלל. Then comes the second part of Hallel. ועניינו לעתיד לבוא לזמן גלויות. That is for the future redemption that will be. That is what all of us are living through. The redemption that continues to take place. And therefore when we say בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו, we went out of Egypt then, we'll go out of Egypt again. There is more redemption. Rav Kook writes that the redemption that began in Egypt is continuing. It's continually taking place, continually developing and advancing. And that is something we are trying to connect to. I just want to share with you source number 9, a very beautiful letter. This was written by Hadar Goldin, Zichor Livracha. Hadar Goldin, I'm sure many people know, he was a soldier in the IDF during Operation Sukeitan. He was killed, and tragically his body still has not been recovered. And he wrote this after he died. He was a young soldier who was murdered. But before that, many of his writings, he was a madrich in Bnei Akiva, and he wrote letters to his chanichim, very, very insightful and very powerful letters. And some of them were published. This is something he wrote to his chanichim. Again, it was written for children, but it applies to all of us, and I think it connects very nicely to what we've said and helps us to connect to this ultimate goal of Seder night. He says like this, source number 9. He says, Tov, עברנו את פורים ואנחנו ממש לפני הפסח. This letter was written between Purim and Pesach. He says, הדבר המיוחד לפורים ולפסח, ששניהם מלאים בסיפורים. These two chagim, which have much more in common than you realize, but both are filled with stories. אנחנו כולנו נהיים מספרי סיפורים. We tell stories. בפורים we tell the story of the Megillah. On Pesach, מרבים לספר בסיפורי יציאת מצרים. We tell the stories of leaving Egypt. בחיים שלנו, יש הרבה סיפורים, and we are all live our lives, we have many stories. לכל אחד יש את הסיפור שלו, וכל הסיפורים שלנו הם חלק מסיפור גדול של עמנו. Each one of us has our individual story, but all of those come together as part of the bigger story of our nation. שמוביל את הסיפור הגדול של ההיסטוריה, which is the bigger story of the world. בדרך היו אבותינו, ועכשיו אנחנו. And he says, בסיפור הזה כל אחד יכול להחליט אם הוא הדמות הראשית, הגיבור, אם הוא הדמות המשנית, שהסיפור חולף לידו. When we tell the story of the world, when we tell the story of our lives, are we the main characters, or are we in the supporting roles sitting in the sidelines? האם אתה מוביל את הסיפור? Are you leading the story? האם הסיפור שלך הוא סיפור טוב? Is it a good story? האם הסיפור שלך מחובר לסיפור של עם ישראל? Is it part of this great story of עם ישראל? Part of this great story of leaving Egypt? And I think that's the idea. We tell the stories on the Seder night. כאילו יצא ממצרים. Part of the point here is understand Yetziat Mitzrayim began then. It continues now. It's not כאילו. By the time we get to the end of the Seder, we've said the Hallel on that which has been in the past. We say the Hallel of that which is in the future, that which is in the present, that which is in our own lives. We realize that all these stories are interconnected. And I would suggest that as we go through the stories, it says, Kol HaMarbeh Harezeh Mushabach, on the Seder night, we tell the stories that are written in the Haggadah, we tell the stories that are not written in the Haggadah. Each and every single person here has got stories upon stories of who they are and where they came from and how we have contributed to Am Yisrael, how we want our children to contribute to Am Yisrael. That's what the Seder is about. That's what it's inspiring us. It's a call to action as well at the end of the day. We began saying, Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo. Chayav Adam laharot et atzmo. We need to show ourselves. We can't relate to what had happened before, so we'll do it externally. We'll do the actions, and hopefully through that we influence our emotions, that we influence our thoughts, that we influence our opinions. And as we do that, we sing out those songs of praise. We realize, we remember what the Ramban taught us. We realize all the stories are actually connected. We realize that our own Yetziat Mitzrayim, that too is part of the bigger story. We tell those stories as well. And we leave the night with that taste in our mouth thinking there is a story here, there is such a great story that we have still yet to tell. And let us continue to tell it. Wishing everybody a Chag Kasher V'Sameach.